freaking first cut. Golly.
Hello, YouTube. This is your Scottish Open betting preview. We're going to go through the entire betting board and answer your questions along the way. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll jump into it right now. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and we are diving deep into every aspect of the betting board for this week's Scottish Open. Patrick McDonald is here. Patrick, good to see you, bud.
Good to see you guys. Luckily Paul Barjan's not in the field. At least I don't think so. So hopefully we can attack the top of this board. Unbelievable field in Scotland this week.
Unbelievable field in Scotland is absolutely right. Sia Nejad is here. Sia, welcome.
Yeah, speaking of WDs, I guess Harold Varner just withdrew as well. And I'm assuming he's fine. But, it's funny because as you're putting your lineups in, you're always debating, with me, I wasn't sure if I was going to include Varner in my pool or not. And now I don't have to worry about it. So it's like a sense of relief somehow.
Yeah, HV3 out, according to the media website. I haven't seen PGA Tour comps tweet it out yet, but it's on the media website, replaced by Julien Guerrier, I imagine is how he pronounces that. He's probably a Frenchman. I'm making that. I have no idea. I'm just making that up. So we will see. But Patrick, you alluded to the field. Absolutely jam-packed. Rory is basically the only not, top 15 player who's not here. How does that impact your betting card when you have to start splitting hairs at the top?
Yeah, I think for me, I hate the narrative of, these guys are looking ahead. I don't really buy into it too much, but I think it's going to be a big guy who wins, to tell you the truth. And so you kind of have to pick one or two guys in that 30-1 or under range and, stick to your guns in that respect. But yeah, 14 out of the top 15 players in the world. We're going to get major championship caliber golf. The best guys typically win major championships, and I think one of the best guys is going to win this week.
Yeah, and we can certainly dive into any questions, comments, or concerns that come in via the chat. So if you have any of those, make sure to drop them in right now. Sia, it's always a little bit tempting when you get a field like this to just start clicking 8 of the top, 12 names on the board, and then you actually hit one, but you've lost money because John Rahm wins at 11-1 and you've bet 13 guys. Like it's a tricky little pickle we've got ourselves in this week.
Yeah, that's why for me, when there's a guy at the top that I really like, my hope, it's like a fingers crossed situation, is that they have like a lukewarm Thursday. And all of a sudden, instead of let's say Justin Thomas being 14-1, all of a sudden he's 22-1 because he's, let's say 6 shots back of however many people, a lot of people in front of him. Because we know here, if the wind stays relatively calm, that these elite players are going to be able to pass people on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I agree with Patrick that it's really the top of the board that I think I would like to bet. But I will say between the 30 and 60 range, I think there are guys that you can bet and justify, like Sung J M at 40 or even Max Homa at 60. I don't want to get too far afield of the guys in the, let's say the top 15, top 20, but I do think there's some shots you can take here.
All right, well, Sia kind of kicked us off on the weather portion of the show, so let's just do it. Producer Troy, are you able to share my screen? Okay, thank you. So I'm not even an amateur meteorologist. I don't claim to be. I don't want to be. However, what we know is that when we play across the pond, weather plays an important role. Now, my friends from the UK, they told me, Patrick, they said, get off of weather.com. Get off of Windfinder. Get off of Weather Underground. You want metoffice.gov.uk. Have you ever heard of this before?
I have not, no.
Obviously not. So this is apparently the government weather site, and apparently it's the most accurate thing you can find. But here's what I see, Patrick. And again, this can change very, very quickly. Here is Thursday from 6 a.m. to about 6 p.m. Wind is what I'm really concerned about. Mm-hmm. Anywhere from 8 to 11 miles an hour with gusts up to 18, basically the majority of the day. When you get to 4 o'clock, that's when things start to change, in my opinion. It goes up to sustained winds of 18, 19, 20 miles an hour, gusts of 27, 30, 31. That will likely, Patrick, looking at tee times, only impact the guys that are playing like teeing off, I don't know, 1:30, 2 o'clock or later, and then impact maybe the last 7 to 9 holes, something like that. Am I observing this correctly?
I mean, I think you're selling yourself short for calling
Thank
yourself
you.
an amateur meteorologist. I mean,
Thank you.
you got access to the government website. We're just talking about
It's
lightly
amazing.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe I've got some sweet connections down there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you know some people across the pond clearly, but I think you kind of deciphered it correctly. You know, final 9 might be a bit tough for those guys late on the golf course, and it really puts those guys early off in an advantageous spot. So, yeah, and when you've listened to like Tom Doak talk about this property, his thing is we haven't really seen a ton of wind in previous years. Like the winning score has been around 20 under, and he's kind of nervous that this course is suitable to a putting contest almost. So those guys off early Thursday, or I guess tonight, are going to have a really good time. I think, you know, really low scores, I'd imagine.
Also, yes, keep in mind that if you're watching this live, the tournament starts in 13 hours. If you are not watching this live, it starts sooner than that. So make sure you get your picks in, make sure you have your lineup set, make sure you have all that rocking and rolling before you go to bed this evening. So Sia,
hey Rick, can I ask you real quick, because this is really great. If you're not watching on YouTube, we actually see the weather that Rick somehow tapped into through a government database. But do we know what Friday looks like? And I only ask selfishly for like the people who are, myself included, who are playing DK and want to know if there's maybe a wave advantage. I'm curious if Friday morning is easier than Friday afternoon. If that's the case, then maybe there's not as much of a split, but I doubt that's the case.
So Friday does not have as detailed of information because we're a little bit further out, but it has every few hours instead of basically every hour. So from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., it's basically the same, 14 to 18 miles an hour of winds. It gets a little bit gustier in the afternoon, but I'm not sure that this is a huge difference on Friday if everything stays this way. See,
I agree with that. Looking at this now, I agree with that, especially with the wind sort of picking up in the middle of the day, and those gusts are pretty, I mean, flat as far as I'm concerned. Anywhere between 23 and 31. I mean, that's obviously going to vary. So I agree with you there.
So the notables that the Thursday afternoon wind pickup might impact. Let's look at 135 is like Patrick Cantlay, Max Homa. That might be early enough. You start getting towards 2 o'clock and you get, I mean, Matthew Neese. I mean, it's there's not really top 10 players that is impacting, to be quite honest with you.
You're about to compare Matthew Neesmith and Patrick Cantlay.
I know. Things were about to get off the rails there very, very quickly. But that's the weather. So we think that maybe Thursday afternoon might be a little bit more difficult. Again, caveat is if that holds true, which
exactly
we'll check on. Okay, so with that being said, let's start to identify some golfers that we like here. So I've got Caesar Sportsbook open, and let's just start with the outright market here, gentlemen. And there are, as of right now, 5 golfers that are shorter than 20-1. John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander Schauffele. Patrick, you were talking about building your card. Has one of those golfers made it onto your card, or are we starting a little bit further down?
I'm starting a little bit further down. I don't think you could really go wrong with any of those guys. I mean, Xander Schauffele just won the Travelers, the JP McManus. Do we think he's going to be winning 3 events in a row? Maybe not. I don't know. But when it comes to John Rahm, he's been unbelievable. The putter and the short game's coming around. I do have some exposure to him, just not in the outright market. And then, you know, Scotty Scheffler is fantastic. Justin Thomas has been great here. But I started further down with Sam Burns, actually, around 30-1. And T18 here last year, and his wedges were actually pretty bad. And he's a guy who's super long off the tee. You have these wide fairways. And if this does actually turn into a putting contest, I love Sam Burns in that respect. I mean, he makes birdies in bunches. He's one of the best in that regard. And then I also tagged along Jordan Spieth. And, you know, numbers wise, it never loves Jordan Spieth, you know, on my end. And so I have to have a feel with him almost. And when creativity is involved, how can you not look in Spieth's direction? You just look at his record in the Open Championship; it's unbelievable. So I added him. Those are kind of the two top dogs at the top of the odds board that I went with.
Betting Jordan Spieth is it's not a science, it's an art, right? It's never like, oh, you just, do the formula and he comes out as the answer. It's like, no, sometimes it's abstract and sometimes it's cubism and sometimes it's, whatever else. And you got to figure out Jordan Spieth along the way. Okay. So that is Sam Burns and Jordan Spieth starting the card for Patrick. Sia, where would you like to start your outright card?
Yeah, another guy that doesn't necessarily like spit out number one in the models, that's kind of like Jordan Spieth, who just manufactures wins, is Cameron Smith, who I'll be honest, I don't have him yet. He's 25-1. And I have another guy that I sort of liked at 25-1. So I didn't want to have two guys that were relatively short. And that other guy is Will Zalatoris. Now, I should mention Will Zalatoris goes out Thursday at around 115, 130. So if you want to factor that in, that's fine. But I like Will Zalatoris up top, and I agree with Sam Burns. Sam Burns was, from a DraftKings standpoint and from an odds standpoint, he was one of the first names I looked at even before I saw pricing. I was like, this course seems to set up really well for Sam Burns. He's been a little flat lately, particularly off the tee. He's been a little wayward. But again, when he's on with the approach and when he's on with the putter, there's very few that can beat him. And so I'm kind of leaning on that spike potential in both regards because that's what he's been doing for the most part. So at the top, I like Will Zalatoris and Sam Burns. But I should mention this, though. This is really confusing to me because on a big platform, Will Zalatoris in a head-to-head matchup against Sam Burns is minus 140 to Sam Burns' plus 115. That scares me a little bit, but it scares me almost more from a DraftKings standpoint than it does an outright potential standpoint because I know what Sam Burns can do. But I did feel like it was important to point that out.
Interesting. I will also point out that if you want to squeeze every ounce of juice out of Cameron Smith, Caesars has a boost on him, and it is up to 27-1. So you can get just a little bit more, a couple extra points out of Cam Smith if that's what you're looking for. Okay, gentlemen, I want to go down a little bit further down the board, find some golfers in the middle, find some long shots, see if we can make a little bit more money. But first, we're going to pay the bills, and we're going to hear a word from our partners.
We're about to start our very own streaming service.
South Park: The Streaming Wars is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Yeah!
Surprise!
We're in the streaming business too.
Where'd you get that? Making stuff for streaming services? At the end of the day, there's only going to be like 3 streaming services. I think you've had too many popsicles. Yeah, I think maybe I had one too many popsicles.
South Park: The Streaming Wars now streaming.
Why can't people just have a one streaming service? Have everything
Exclusively on Paramount Plus.
And we're back. Let's take a little bit of a longer look on this betting board here and get down into the meat of it, that 30 to 60 area, Patrick. It's an area of the betting board that disproportionately wins more frequently than it should. You, especially in a field like this, you get names like Hideki Matsuyama, Victor Hovland, Corey Connors, Joaquin Niemann. You go a little bit further, you get Max Homa at 50-1. So is there a name or two that's catching your attention here?
Yeah, I think going with two guys near the top, I'm kind of afforded not too much in this area of the board. But, if I had to pick 3 off the top, Niemann spit out really good numbers for me, Corey Connors and Max Homa as well. I went a little off the base. I went with Christian Bezuidenhout. I got him at 95 to begin the week. And hopefully he takes a page out of JT Poston's book almost and rides that momentum from last week into a win this weekend. He's really straight off the tee and kind of just been up and down. It's almost like every other week he's good. Hopefully he bucks that trend this week, but that was a number I couldn't pass up on Monday.
Well, you might have moved the market there, Patrick, because he's down to 65-1. Caesar saw that bet come in from you, and they said, "Oh boy, we better drop
Probably,
it 40 points." Yeah, congratulations on that. Sia, there's Max Homa to me. I've already bet him. I think he rates out beautifully. I actually might back it up with a bet next week as well at the Open Championship. So the meat of this board offers quite a few options. What do you see?
Yeah, I'll agree with you on Max Homa. Did you say Hideki on Caesars was 35? Is that what you said?
He is, as of this exact moment, 35-1. Yes.
I love that number. And I last time out, Hideki was fantastic with the putter and with the approach. So I think 35 is a really good number for Decky. So I'll go Decky. I'll go Max Homa. A couple others in that 30 to 60 range. Sung J M, who's kind of going a little unnoticed, might be a sneaky DraftKings play. He's 40 to 1. And a longer shot, Aaron Rye. I don't play a lot of Aaron Rye. I really respect his game. For whatever reason, he's never really on my betting card or in my DraftKings lineups. But I will say he's been trying like heck, I'll say heck, to qualify for this Open Championship. And he's almost done it. At the Irish Open, he had a qualifier right before the Irish Open where he lost in a playoff. Like he is, when we talk about the motivation thing and we're like, yeah, well, is Ricky Fowler motivated to, qualify for such and such tournament? And the argument is always like, well, he was probably really motivated to do it, a week ago and a month ago too. In Aaron Rye's case, it looks like this motivation is actually paying off with high marks from him. So at 60 to 1, I actually think Aaron Rye is a pretty decent play.
I think you can say hell.
Okay, I can say
the
hell.
other thing is, what's interesting is, and Patrick, you're like the journalist in the group, I guess. You probably know like MLA formatting or whatever. The
nice
word
ref.
Thank you. The word helluva, that's like an acceptable term. HELLUVA. Like I use that a lot. That's acceptable in like writing, right?
It's a pretty good dip too. If you're into that, hell of a good dip for potato chips, a little French onion.
Oh,
if you want to get in there.
I didn't know where you were going. Okay.
But yeah, as I guess the journalist in the room, I had a really tough time. I'm going off on a tangent. Spelling canceled today. Some people
is
use
it one L or two L's? Yeah.
I guess in America we use one.
I had it with the ED. Oh, okay, yeah. I think you're right. My bad.
And then across the pond, it's two. So
well, I'll tell you what. I just do whatever Google tells me. Whatever spell check tells me to do is the route that I go. I cannot get out of this range without pointing out Ryan Fox, who from the jump on Monday was 40 to 1 or somewhere amongst Sung J M, Victor Hovland, Joaquin Niemann, Tommy Fleetwood. Sia, that is a hell of a lot of respect for Ryan Fox. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong. He's got 8 top 8s in a row on the DP World Tour. But usually when we get everybody together, Fox would be 60, 70, 80 to 1.
Yeah. And that's why like at 40 or 45 to 1, I'm just not really interested. I think there's a lot of people who grab that number at the right price. Listen, if there's something that's like 150 to 1 and you lose the number and it becomes like 110 to 1 or even 100 to 1, like I'm not going to quibble about that. You put $10 on that, you're still making a ton of money. But in this case, going down to 40 to 1 and seeing who he's up against and seeing his level of competition. Listen, I think he's a great golfer and he's a good course fit, but I would much rather take some of the guys like Sung Jae right below him, or I might even speculate on a Cameron Young below him, or Victor Hovland, Joaquin Niemann, Hideki, that are right sort of in that ballpark. So I'm just not interested in taking him at that number.
The comment you made earlier, Patrick, in regards to this is going to play like a major championship, and usually in majors, the big boys win. I agree. So I want to know how far down this betting board you'd like to draw the line. We can get into 80 to 1 with Sahith Tagala. We can go down to 100 to 1 and find, oh boy, that was a bad example, 125 to 1 and find Luke List, right? Like, where are we drawing the line on this field?
I might be like the worst person to ask because
you bet like Paul Barjon, who's not in the field yet, at like 10,000 to 1.
Thinking about it, at the rate they're adding people to this field, we're up to 160. Who knows? I bet on Matt Wallace actually, and I know he's been a name mentioned on this show before. And the miscut at the John Deere Classic does not inspire confidence, right? In a field of that caliber, guy should not be missing the cut. But before that, the iron play was pretty good. T5, T18, T35, T46 his last 4 starts worldwide. And he has a great history here as well. He's been gaining more than 4 strokes in each of his 3 appearances. But like you said, it's tough kind of to go for a triple-digit long shot this week. That's why I went with just one really far down. I know it's a shot in the dark, but that was a number I really liked on a player who has proven in the past to be quality amongst some of these guys.
Yeah, Matt Wallace, 150 to 1 right now over at Caesars. Sia, where would you like to draw the line on this betting board?
I love that Patrick mentioned Matt Wallace because for a couple of reasons. One, he's 6,700 in DraftKings, and I do think, in spite of last week, his recent play has been pretty good, especially on the World Tour. I was like kind of all in on him last week, and that did not serve me well at all. I'm talking about DraftKings, of course. But again, when somebody lets you down one week, that doesn't mean you don't play him the next week. So I'll probably be in on him in some capacity, both in the betting, like top 40 market perhaps, and in DraftKings. I probably would stop right at, I'm thinking Mito Pereira, maybe Gary Woodland at 80-1. I don't think I would go below Gary Woodland. I know Patrick mentioned Christian Bezuidenhout, but I think it would probably stop right around Gary Woodland, Mito Pereira in that 75 to 80-1 range. Again, Max Homa at 60 is a guy I like. I think Keith Mitchell at 70 is interesting. I kind of prefer him as a first round leader rather than a guy who is going to win the tournament over 4 rounds. But I think 80-1 is the stopping point.
Okay, fair enough. Patrick, let me tee you up on a question here from Michael in regards to Tommy Fleetwood. Michael would like your thoughts on Tommy. He says, yeah, I have Xander and Tommy Fleetwood left in my one and done, and I need to decide quick. Well, not like super quick. He's got like 12 or 13 hours or so, but Michael needs to know right now, Patrick, how or if he should be deploying Tommy Fleetwood.
I think between the two, I know Tommy lost in a playoff here to Rye a couple years ago, but that was kind of the outlier of the 3 events here, right? It was in October. No PGA Tour players were allowed to play because of the COVID restrictions. I think the winning score was around 11 under. And so I guess between the two, I would kind of lean Xander. He has a good links history, top 10 here last year as well. And yeah, I mean, I feel like you're either a Tommy Fleetwood guy or you're not, almost, right? He's one of those guys where, you draw the line and there's people on one side, people on the other. And I don't really have a real opinion on him. I know he had some, nice finishes. I think he finished inside the top 10 in DP World Tour event recently. Yeah. But between the two, I think Xander is just a much better play in general.
Yeah, that T10, the Porsche European Open a couple of weeks ago, missed the cut at the U.S. Open and then finished T46 at the Travelers for Tommy Ladd. But it would be very Tommy-esque to win an event that's like co-sanctioned, not in the United States. Sia, it would be so perfect.
Can I just say something? I find it so perfect that I can't remember the name of the person who asked that question. That question was not directed towards me because nobody's going to ask me for a one and done pick for basically the rest of time. So I just wanted to point that out. It's like specifically a Patrick question.
That is correct. We will not be asking you your opinion on one and done, at least until next year when we get a fresh start. Why is I don't see Top Asian on Caesars anymore. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, that was slander. Apologies. Oh, no, that was not slander. They have the Barbasol Top Asian. Because, Patrick, you found this earlier, didn't you? You have this on your card.
Top South Korean.
Oh, I'm sorry. So hold on. Maybe that's okay. I'm looking for the wrong category. Yes, here we go. Okay. Nationality section. Top South Korean. My bad. Sung Jae-im is the favorite at plus 160. KH Lee is plus 350. Siwoo Kim, 4-1. Bio Kim and Ju Hung Kim are plus 650, both of them. And then JK Lee, 14-1. Find me a winner here, please, Patrick.
Yeah, I actually bet into Sung Jae at plus 160. I agree that he's going a bit under the radar, probably because of that back injury at the Travelers Championship withdrawing. And yeah, I think me personally, I've lost a ton of money on Siwoo Kim recently, so I figured you got to bet against him at some point. And I think this is a great spot for Sung Jae. I think among, Siwoo, KH, Bio, Tom, and JK, he has the highest floor by far. I thought this number would be shorter. It's shorter at a lot of other books. So for me, it was kind of an easy bet on Sung Jae at plus 160 to win this market.
Patrick speaking hypothetically, of course, because there are no other books available other than Caesars Sportsbook. It's the only book in the world. Hi, Sia.
Sorry.
I'm just messing. Sia, would you like to find me a nationality pick? Which category would you like me to go to? I've got English, I've got Spanish, I've got French, I've got Swedish, I got everything.
I'll go to one, but I gotta offer the disclaimer because I kind of navigated this. And by the way, it's going to be top South African. I navigated this yesterday. I didn't see anything I loved, but I will kind of put out a pick for top South African in honor of Mark Emmelman, of course.
Christian Bezuidenhout, the favorite in the top South African category, plus 330. Justin Harding, who Plus 400, who I find this fascinating where so Harding and Adrian Otegi and Ian Poulter, they get their stay and they get added to this field late. So they just stick Harding and Otegi in the first group out by themselves on Thursday morning. It's like, yeah, take this 7:15 a.m. by yourself. It's a 2-ball instead of a 3-ball. Good luck. Like, that's kind of dirty.
That's hilarious. Well, maybe there's some bulletin board material for them, but I'm going to go to Eric Van Rooyen. I listen, he hasn't been good, but again, on the DFS show, I mentioned how it was this time of year where he really started to ramp things up with a first place finish, a 37th place finish, 7th, 5th, 22nd as we got towards the FedEx Cup playoffs. So I could see his game coming around. It's plus 500. There's a lot of good guys. I mean, Dean Burmester's in here, Dylan Fratelli, Justin Harding might have something to say about it, of course, Bezuidenhout, but I like the plus 500 number.
How is okay? Our friends over at Caesars. Let's figure this out. Brandon Grace is not listed on Caesars. Brandon Grace just won the live event. He's in this field. Okay. He's teeing off at 12:25. He is South African. So how will Caesars treat this if he is the top South African and they did not offer him? Well, because there's not a field option here. It's just they've listed the South Africans. They've omitted him. Will they go to the second South African, or will everyone lose if Brandon Grace is the top South African and they did not offer it?
No, they didn't offer it. So I think it's just irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter where he finishes. That's how I see it.
See, I might be more pessimistic than you. I just feel like if Brandon Grace, it's like when Nate Lashley got in Wednesday night and wasn't offered by any books and he won. It's not like they give you the outright on the next guy. It's just they wipe you clean. It's like it's like 0-0 in roulette. They just wipe the board.
But they didn't even give you the option. Here you have the option, and they're not giving you the option for the extra guy. So, I mean, it's a good question, but if he was in this, the odds would completely change as well. So you're it's kind of like a double hit because you're not getting the benefit of greater odds. Eric Van Rooyen would be plus probably 650 if Brandon Grace was added to this South African field.
Often taken to the house rules over at Caesars, which is always a fun thing to do. Okay. Patrick, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned Jon Rahm, and you mentioned not betting him outright, but you noted that you were going to have exposure to him in other markets. I would like you to reveal what those other markets might be right now.
Yeah, I single bullet for first round leader for me, and it's Jon Rahm at 25-1. He's got that morning tee time, and he was great at this tournament last year. Just really could not make a putt to save his life. Finished inside the top 10. But last 5 or 6 starts, the putter has been quietly hot in the short game, the chipping, it all looks great. It really feels like, he could really push himself into a FedEx Cup playoff run, kind of like Cantlay last year. It seems like we're kind of on the cusp of that. And so you're giving me double the odds of his outright market. And look, worst comes to worst, he doesn't perform well on Thursday. His outright odds will probably get a bit longer. And, that could be a fun way to attack it as well later. But I went with Jon Rahm as the first round leader.
Oh, okay. Sia, you've been known to tickle our fancy with a couple of first round leaders now and then. Do you have any leans in that department?
Yeah, I've got 6 guys for you. 5 of them are in the AM, and the one that's in the PM is kind of on the front end of the PM. It's Will Zalatoris at 45-1. I'll be honest, I'm a little sketchy about that one because I like to have the biggest advantage possible, and that's usually with slightly lower wind and, first out on the golf course. So Will Zalatoris at 45-1, but the other 5 who are in the AM, Cam Smith at 40, Sam Burns at 40, Joaquin Niemann at 50, Aaron Rai at 65, and Keith Mitchell also at 65-1.
There you go. A plethora of first round leaders. There was one other thing I wanted to get to. First round leaders. We did that.
Matchups?
Yes. But before I forget, it is not often that we get a really strong field the week before a major. So Are you, Patrick, considering betting anyone now for the Open Championship, kind of hedging yourself in case they play well this week? So I'll give you the perfect example of the guy that I think could be impacted the most. The Open Championship, let's see. Jordan Spieth is like 20. Let me make sure I get this right.
5-ish.
20. I was going to
22-ish.
say 22-ish, but let me just confirm this real quick. Well, he's actually dropped 20-1. So maybe he's a bad example. But like Patrick, let's do Patrick Cantlay. Patrick Cantlay's 28-1 to win the Open Championship. If Patrick Cantlay wins this week, he's going to be like 16-1 at the Open Championship next week. So are you at all considering, and it's kind of, there's only a handful of guys that I think this impacts, but are you considering locking in a smaller portion of an outright on something for the Open Championship next week, knowing that those odds could get shorter for the guys that you like?
Yeah, I mean, the guy you named off the top, Jordan Spieth, is probably the one who would be most affected just because, one, people love to bet on Jordan Spieth. Two, he's great in links golf. Stroke out of the playoff in 2015 here for the Spieth Slam. And yeah, I mean, having bet him this week, it has definitely crossed my mind. I'm a bit disappointed that it has already dropped to 20-ish to 1. I saw some 25s. I might have to go search out there, see if anything like that's available. But yeah, I think that's a good play. But Spieth is really the only one to me where his number will drop, not substantially, but enough where it would bug me if I didn't, at least grab some of it. Right.
That you nailed it. He's also a very public golfer. So I feel like he would move quite a bit and seems to already be trending in that direction. Sia, we know we're going to get a reset of odds next week. So it's kind of a dangerous game to play, but I do think whether it's Spieth or whether it's those guys in like the late 20s and early 30s, if they play well or win this week, their odds will be cut in half for next week.
Yeah, I mean, a few guys I have in mind would probably be Hideki at 28, although his Open Championship history isn't great. The same could be said for Sam Burns at 35. A guy that I think could do well here, though, at 50-1 is Sungjae Im. I think if Sungjae top fives this thing, 50-1 becomes 35-1 pretty quick. So that's a guy I would maybe have my eye on.
Okay, fair enough. Let's do our matchups. Then we will do who is absolutely not going to win, and then we will get out of here. So let's roll through these, Patrick. I'll just give you this one. Billy Horschel is plus 110 versus Joaquin Niemann, who's the big favorite at minus 140. Billy Horschel is a little fired up. Billy Horschel might be playing with a chip on his shoulder this week. Any interest in him, or would you take the Joaquin Niemann side?
I would lay the juice with Niemann. I actually have Horschel to miss the cut, to tell you the truth. And look, outside of the Memorial, he hasn't really been that great, right? The ball striking hasn't been fantastic. He's missed 2 out of his last 4 cuts. And you look at his history in links golf, 7 Open Championships. He's only made the cut twice, 2 T54 here last year. And so someone like Niemann, the low ball flight, tremendous ball striker, the short game's picking up. I would lay the juice there.
Okay, how about this big boy matchup for you, Sia? Jon Rahm versus Scottie Scheffler. Jon Rahm is minus 125. Scottie Scheffler is minus 105. Not a lot of respect for the number 1 player in the world.
Very interesting. I would take Scottie Scheffler there at minus 105. I like the number. I probably think it should be flipped, but I understand why the sentiment would be high on Jon Rahm. But Scottie, when you bring the talent to a tournament, he tends to shine. And when you don't bring a talent to a tournament, he tends to shine as well. But the point is, I just love Scottie's demeanor. I love his gameplay. I love everything about him.
Victor Hovland, Patrick, plus 100. Even money to Sungjae Im, minus 130. Sungjae nipping Victor in the head-to-head market here. What side would you prefer?
Yeah, that's moved a bit too since last night. It was minus 120, and I'm loving the Sungjae love on this show because I like him a lot this week as well. And, since the Players' Championship, Victor Hovland's ball striking has actually dropped off a little bit. I know everyone talks about the around the green play, but ball striking wise, the irons haven't been fantastic. He's making a ton of putts, but still isn't really able to translate that into quality finishes. So I like Sungjae in this one.
Okay, Sia, last one here. Colin Morikawa, minus 120 to Jordan Spieth's minus 110. I have not heard any comments about the way clubs are interacting with turf or anything of that nature. Which side would you prefer here?
This is a close one, but I'm going to go with Jordan Spieth. He was one of the guys I was kind of locking in on early before I saw odds, before I saw pricing. I thought he'd be a good play, and I still do. I think Colin Morikawa was interesting from a DFS standpoint because his ownership is likely going to be really low. Great contrarian play relative to the other guys in his range, but for a head-to-head, give me Jordan Spieth.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's round out Patrick's card here. Producer Troy, do we have his card available? We'll start with Patrick. We'll roll through the stuff that we haven't seen. Okay, Patrick's card. Love this thing. So I believe we talked about all of your outrights, Patrick, which are Burns, Spieth, Christian Bezuidenhout, Matt Wallace, 30, 33, 80, and 25-1. Your first round leader we discussed, John Rahm at 25-1. Your Sung, you got your Sung Jae over Victor Hovland bet in at a better line than it is now. And the one we didn't talk about is Matty Fitzpatrick over JT.
Yeah, I think it's just like last week with Hadwin and Webb Simpson. I know it kind of bit me in the butt a little bit. Hadwin lost by 1, but I make this one a coin flip. And if you make this bet enough times, you're going to make money. I'm not really concerned about, Matt Fitzpatrick US Open hangover or anything of that nature. He's just unbelievable. I mean, both these guys are. And so when you're giving me a coin flip, I'm going to take the plus money. So that's why I went with Fitzpatrick.
Okay. And then the maybe spiciest take that you have here is simultaneously your to miss the cut and your pick not to win. Same golfer, Colin Morikawa.
Yeah, I'm not buying into kind of the 5th place finish at the US Open. And KP talks about how he doesn't think Colin Morikawa is a great win player. And I always kind of fight back with him saying he's got a lot of time to figure that out, but maybe this week he doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out. And because of that, I thought the US Open was a lot of putt luck. He was getting up and down from just about everywhere. His irons were just okay. And he didn't really, take to this golf course too well in his debut last year. So I think at 2-1, it's something I'm willing to risk. And I don't think he's going to win, obviously.
That's very spicy. That's pretty good. The other miscut one is Billy Horschel plus 150. You don't think Billy is going to be able to back up his comments this week with good play?
No, I don't. And kind of like I said, outside of his win at Jack's Place, it really hasn't been all too fantastic after the Florida swing, missing the cut in 2 out of his last 4. Doesn't have a great record in Scotland in general. So plus 150, something I can get behind. Okay,
and we did cover Sung Jae In plus 160 to be top South Korean. So that is Patrick's card right there. Producer Troy, you can grab me Sia Nejad's card if you. Thank you very much. Okay, outrights. I believe we covered all of these, Sia. Zalatoris at 25-1, Burns at 30, Homa at 60, which is a better number than he's at right now, and then Mito Pereira is at 75-1. You gave us your first round leaders. Let's talk about your top 20. Zalatoris and Homa here. So what you are doing is you are backing up your outrights with top 20 wagers on these two.
Yeah, and I love both of these guys. I mean, we talked about how well they're playing. I do want to caution, if the win split on Thursday becomes even bigger than it is now, which it's not huge by any means, but if that develops over the afternoon, just keep in mind Will Zalatoris is in the afternoon. So it's just something that I wanted to put out there. But yeah, listen, Will Zalatoris and Max Homa, I don't think Max Homa should be 60-1. If you look at the way he's playing, it's just he's been immaculate other than one event where he had a really bad putter. So I don't think they're locks to make the top 20, but at these plus numbers, I really like both Will and Max Homa.
Homa makes your outright card. He makes your top 20 market. He is one of your best matchups. You have him over Keegan Bradley. Is this just an all-in situation on Homa, or is it a little bit of a fade on Keegan as well?
It's not really a fade on Keegan because Keegan's playing really, really well. But I just think Max Homa is playing better. And I think Max Homa has more outs than Keegan in terms of just being successful on this course. So, I'm a little curious about the number. I thought that number would be like minus 120 or minus 125. So that gives me a little bit of caution, but I still like Max Homa to finish ahead of Keegan Bradley.
And then finally, Aaron Rai, minus 130 over Matt Kuchar. Aaron Rai won this event in 2020, as we talked about a little bit earlier. You have him playing well again here at the Renaissance Club.
Yeah, and frankly, even if he didn't win in 2020, I would still like this bet at the number at minus 130. Kuchar's been fine. Like, he's fine. But Aaron Rai has been really good, and I do think the motivation is playing into his finishing positions a little bit. I think we're kind of seeing that. We have a little bit of evidence of that, and I think it's going to continue this week.
Okay, that is Sia Nejad's card. Thank you very much. Let me run through a couple of these questions real quick. Mark says, how about Justin Rose at 70-1? Just showing a bit of form with the top 10 at the PGA and good finish at the Canadian Open. Obviously loves links courses. Either of you gentlemen have a reasonable take on Justin Rose?
I just want to point out that I really kind of like him as a first round leader. I don't like him at 70-1 to win, to be honest with you. But as a first round leader, I don't know what those odds are. But I do agree that Justin Rose is coming into good form. I just don't think he can do it for 4 rounds against this competition.
Yeah, so it was 14th at the Zurich, 13th at the PGA Championship. He missed the cut at Colonial, then finished T4 at the RBC Canadian, and he made the cut at the US Open. That's the last handful of events for Justin Rose. There's a question here about a very specific fantasy format. It says, in Fantasy DP World Tour, which I didn't know existed, you can choose any 6 players that you want and earn points. What 6 players would you choose? Patrick, I get these questions a lot, and I feel like the answer is just like, if there's no other restrictions, you just take the 6 guys at the top of the betting board, right? Like, I know that sounds stupid and it's not fun and it's not the smartest guy in the room, but if there are no other restrictions on you, maybe you just take the 6 guys at the top.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. And if you want to get maybe a bit contrarian, sub out one of the top guys with someone like a Sung JM, who we talked about a lot this week. But yeah, I mean, John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas. Can't really go wrong with those guys.
Right. If you picked John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, and then X golfer that you like, maybe you love Colin Morikawa over Sam Burns, like, get invested there. The other thing about this, Sia, is, and I get questions like that literally 50 times a week, but a lot of it depends on how many other people are playing. So I imagine that if you're playing DP World Tour Fantasy, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people playing, and the prizes are probably very, very top heavy. So in a scenario like that, to Patrick's point, you probably would want to consider getting more contrarian. If I was just playing against Patrick, I would take the top 6 golfers every single time. If I'm playing against 1,000 other people, I should probably differentiate, especially because there's so many good guys in this field.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's going to be guys down the board that you could certainly speculate on that we kind of talked about in, let's say, that 30 to 80 to 1 range, or even deeper. I mean, there's some guys from that really only play on the World Tour, like Moronk, for example, Zanatti, like Catlin, like those are like really long bombs. I wouldn't do that here, but there's definitely some guys, Ryan Fox, of course, down the board that you could kind of include that maybe others won't.
Yeah, because the final leaderboard is not going to be John Rahm in first, Scotty Scheffler in second, Justin Thomas in third, Xander Schauffele in fourth. Like, I know, I understand that is not going to happen. Okay, gentlemen, Scottish Open. Do you want to just like spend 30 seconds on the Barbasol? Mark Hubbard's the favorite. Chris Gotterup is 18-1. Kevin Streelman 22. Adam Svensson 25. Taylor Pendrith 25. Patrick, would you spend $1 on any? Where can I get you to spend your money here for the Barbasol?
I think you just throw it on Gotterup, close your eyes, and hope it hits on Sunday.
For sure. Like, there is a chance that Gotterup is by far the best player in this field, right? And we've talked about this before. We don't really know what his ceiling is yet, and it might be very, very high.
It's given me almost like Colin Morikawa at the Barracuda vibes, almost, when he won there.
Oh, I remember, because when he came on the podcast, I guess it was during the shutdown, I introduced him as Barracuda champion Colin Morikawa. Think about how far because that's what he had on the resume. Think about how far we've come since then. No one would ever say that to his face. And I was like, oh, look who it is. It's Colin Morikawa. I agree, Sia. I have bet Gotterup just because I think it's most likely to have a sweat on Sunday, and I love this kid.
Yeah, I think there's some other names that I kind of like. I've actually done a DraftKings lineup as well, just for fun. There's some contests still available, by the way. In that lineup, by the way, I have Patrick Flavin, who I think is interesting. Lee Hodges, John Huh, Kelly Craft, who's really emerging, and of course, Hammer and Hank Lebioda. And maybe one other name to mention, maybe Taylor Moore. But those are some of the names that I'd speculate on a little bit further down the board.
Flavin's my dude. Love that. How deep? What are his odds to win this thing? I'm gonna have to bet him now. 130-1. Oh my God.
That's an auto bet.
Auto bet. I'll be rich come Sunday. Okay, gentlemen, any final thoughts before we get out of here on all things wagering this week?
I would just, before lock, DFS wise, make sure you're up and make sure you know the time difference this week and next week.
Yes. So this thing is going to tee off at 2:15 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday. So plan accordingly, because that is like 5 hours earlier than normal. So plan accordingly. Okay. that'll do it. Producer Troy does all the hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much. Patrick McDonald available on Twitter at Amateur Status, and Sia Nejad is available at Sia Nejad. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.